everybody. I want to say hi to two kinds of people. The Demia people in the house. Good evening. Alafu watu wa mtaa. Woza. How are we guys feeling tonight? Are we feeling good? Can we very quickly do a vibe check in the house to see how guys are feeling, all right? So let me start with this. How are you guys feeling? Wonderful. Wacha tukuje katikati kwa the tuliambiwa classes inside. How are you guys feeling on this side? Hey, sawa. Wacha tuangalie this other side. How are you guys feeling? I want you to do something very simple for me. Tell the person next to you, thank you. Just tell them thank you. And this is why we are telling them Asante. For very long, or for way back before Drunken lectures existed, we used to meet in different places in the CBD, at Jivanji, at Kamukunji, and have conversations about what is happening in our country. And that almost slowed down because not so often do we sit down and just talk about the concerns of our country. But they made time. They've been here since 2 p.m. They've been talking about the problems of our country. They've been sharing on with you. They've been sharing beautiful stories, and they've kept you company. Sindio, give them a high five and tell them one more time, Asante. Now, there are people who want to bring up on stage. So the guys want us to bring up on stage to help us answer a couple of questions. Questions that you guys have, questions that I have, and we're gonna do a very interesting panel conversation. But for this to happen, I'm gonna need your input, your insight as well. So I'm gonna ask them a couple of questions, but at the same time, I'll ask you to please, if you can pay attention and be tipsy at the same time, that's gonna be really great. I'll really, really appreciate that. So are we ready to bring them up on stage? I can't hear you. Are we ready to bring them up on stage? The first person to come up on stage, who is also the only lady coming up on stage, they say that if music heals the soul, then we'd call her Daktari. She's been here, she's sung to us covers. I mean, it's only Njoki who can make Mapambano sound so good. Let me tell you, next week some of us will be doing laundry, cleaning the house to Kapo. Baduma, pambanuma, pambanuma. Hey. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Help me bring up on stage Njoki Karu one more time. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you, DJ. One more time, round of applause for Njoki Karu. You may have your seat. The second gentleman I want to bring up on stage is a gentleman who is a beautiful storyteller. He's told us so much, and I hope you guys were listening, and I can't wait to hear more about him. Please put your hands together. Help me bring up on stage one more time, Ngartia. All right, the penultimate person I want to bring up on stage has drawn us back to class, teaching us the strategy of going to the streets. He spoke so well. I wish he had more time. Help me bring up on stage one more time, Keith Angana. One more time, love to Keith Angana. And lastly, you cannot talk about Uchungu na Uhuru if you're not mentioning this guy. And we've known him to be back in the streets. We've known him to tell stories. He makes being arrested sound so fancy. Leon, like it's in your bucket list, I want to be arrested. And recently, he launched his presidential bid. He says he wants to run for the presidency in 2027. Please help me invite Boniface Mwangi. Fiti sana, karibuni, karibuni, karibuni sana. I want to start with you, Boni. I'm going to ask everyone very simple question, targeted, and then you go to the crowd. Okay? I'm going to give us 5 seconds to please be quiet, because I need your attention. Thank you. Boni, you've been in the streets one too many times. You have, in fact, I think in last year, you attended more funerals than you've ever attended in your life. And every time there's mandamano, every time there's an uprising, there's almost a fight to control the narrative of what is going on and why it's going on. Why?
So the government has actually a very good propaganda machinery. So if you're going to protest about land grabbing, they'll ask you about who paid for the placards. It's always distorting the narrative. If you go to the streets and people are shot by the police, the media will say there was chaos and mayhem, but they don't say the chaos and mayhem came from the police. So the narrative is trying to, guys, can we have one meeting? Shh. It's going to be much easier. So the thing about, so protest has been the way people get heard for the longest time. The first protest was 1922. Nyanjiro led the protest at Central Police Station. Many, many people were killed, but that's the first registered protest, and many others happened after that. And the freedom we have today was through armed struggle and protest. Today, if you go to Uhuru Park, it's because of a protest. Karura Forest that is about to be grabbed because of a protest. Ngartia Road Primary School because of a protest. That the gains we have today have come from protest. Even the right to vote for everyone and repeal Section 2A is because of protest. So the government fears protest. And that is why last year, when there was an uprising in this country, and Ruto was losing the mandate from the people, he had to bring in violence and buy Raila Odinga. And because Raila Odinga is the father of violence in street protest, he brings goons to the streets. And so the controlling of the narrative is to ensure that the movement does not snowball and become something bigger that they can't handle. And that was last year. If June 25th could have continued for one more week, Ruto would have gone home. And so the short-term gap that Ruto did was bring the military to the streets. Then in that meantime, he brought the hand checker, Raila Odinga, to bring to his side. And that introduced goons. So when you go to the streets to protest the placard and the flag, you don't know if you're going to meet the police or plainclothes police who are balaclavas or just goons. So the narrative control is to ensure that everyone doesn't protest. Just bring in fear. And fear is a very powerful emotion because as a parent, if people are dying in the streets, I wouldn't send my son.
Let's appreciate Boni, everybody. Very well said. I'm going to shift gears and come to you, Njoki. As an artist, as an activist, as someone who, like, you really communicate a lot through music. And I'm curious to know, from an artistic point of view, what goes on unsaid? What goes on unsaid regarding our country, regarding the Uchungu na Uhuru that we've gone through?
I'll try and answer what I think you've asked. But I think there's so much, and maybe I'm not going to touch on, let's say, protests and activism necessarily, but I am going to look at the point of, like, Uchungu na Uhuru as an artist, right? There's a lot of being underpaid as an artist, right? So you find someone has 10 gigs or however many gigs in a week, but you're barely being able to, like, you're barely making rent, you're barely making groceries, things like that, right? But then that all stems from how the government is. If we had better leadership, a lot of it would trickle down, and it would allow us as artists to just work and create and create and create without having to think I need to do 10 gigs so that I can just do this, right? So I think, is that what you've asked? Okay.
Check. Great. And I want to come to you, Ngartia. When you started your piece, you said something that really caught my attention. You said that pain is an integral part of Kenya's identity. I'm curious, why did you say, why identity? You could have said it's part of our past, you'd have said it's part of our process and how we got here, but you said it's an integral part of our identity.
We're Kenyan. Kenya, as a concept, did not exist before the 1900s, right? Kenya as a name is, to be honest, a typo, right? It's the explorers asking a Kamba guy next to them who was showing them the way because they were always being shown the way. So what do you call the mountain over there? It's like Kenya, it's like Renyaga. And it's like, oh, Kenya. And now we're stuck with it on our ID. So it is part of our identity. But the way that we were given that identity, the way it was forced upon us, from that, the name, then, as I mentioned earlier, moving from 45 plus micronations, then forced into this huge macronation that sometimes splits families and communities, katikati. So you guys are in Uganda, you guys are in Kenya, but you are the same people, right? That was forced upon us. And then from 1963 to now, we've been part of this experiment to create a Kenyan nation out of that. And generation after generation fails at it. So independence generation painfully fails at it. The generations that pushed through multi-party independence and all that did their best, accomplished the political part, then they got into office and messed it all up, right? And now it's our turn, and we happen to be the, say, generation or a couple of generations that are too deep. So our grandparents are Kenyan. They became Kenyan along the way, but they're Kenyan. Our parents, a majority of them were born Kenyan or around the independence period. And now us, we know nothing else. But the last point, one of the most overt parts of your identity is your name. If you have a Christian or English name or a Muslim name and all that, chances are you ended up with that name painfully. That's why it's part of our identity. And then look outside.
I don't know about you guys, but every time Ngartia, by a show of hands, how many have heard Ngartia speak, give a piece before today? How many have heard it? You know? And sometimes you feel the temptation to sit down and be schooled by this guy because he clearly knows something that we don't know, right? Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now I come to you, Kib. You are a historian and you constantly stand in front of people and give stories, right? But what is the one question you wish guys would ask you? One question you wish guys would ask you?
The main question people usually ask me is where I read all this. And the answer is usually very obvious. I read all of it in the newspapers because the newspaper usually has a lot of stories from history, from policy, from economy and all that stuff. So there are very insightful stories in the newspaper. And well, people are usually surprised to learn that it's easier, or info is easier to get. Like it's literally right in the newspapers, right ahead of us. And yes.
Brilliant. Now, this is what I want us to do. I want to head over to you guys. I want you guys to ask questions. You can either ask them in two phones. Yeah. So, two phones. One, this is gentleman who is going to be moving around with this mic. If you have a question, please shoot up your hand. It can be specific to a particular person, or you have a general question that anyone is going to answer, but you're going to do it in sets of two questions. So we'll take two questions at a go. We have the panelists answer, and then we proceed. Sounds good? All right, so I already see a hand up. So there's one alafu kuna ingine kule nyuma. Pale nyuma kabisa.
Okay, my question is to Boniface. So you have expressed your desire to be the next president. You have taken to the streets to communicate just how much you don't support the current regime and how they're doing things, yeah? So, in order for you to come up with that idea that you'd be a better president than what we currently have, we have had several presidents, you won't be the first. So we kind of have experience with presidents. So what do you think you bring to the table that is completely different? That if you say right now, all of us with voters' cards will go to the ballot and vote you in. What do you bring that's different?
I think it's a very good question. So, number one, I am not a thief, I am not a murderer, and I am not incompetent. So, it's very simple. If you plant mangoes, you can get oranges. Simple as that. There's no one who has ever served or who was part of KANU that can save this country. The people who are in power right now are KANU remnants. They're part of the Moi legacy, and their deeds are known. I think it's very shameful as Kenyans that you will never employ a nanny who has been accused of murder, rape, but you elect such a person as president. It's very shameful. And the other thing is that Kenyans hate themselves to a level they elect the worst to represent them. It's a level of self-hate. Because if I stand here and say, I am not rich, I love this country, I have the skills to run this country, and I know very well that fixing this country is going to take teamwork. It's like an orchestra. The conductor is one person, but everyone plays a single piece of art. I'm an artist. Every time I have a good idea, I workshop my ideas. And I'm saying collectively can run this country. 65% of the population of this country is under 35. Why are you electing people who think living life is grabbing land, owning companies, and hosting parties at State House for 10,000 people? The leaders you have in power hate you and they also hate themselves. They don't love art, they don't love music, they don't read, they claim they're Christians, they're not. They're just full of fakery. I drink, I'm married, I have 3 kids, I love my wife, I party, I love Raha, but I know that I can fix this country. And furthermore, I own a home. I don't want to get any other home. I have only one home. That's enough for me. The people who steal from this country never even enjoy that money. They have a poverty mentality. They went to school barefoot, without shoes. But they have decided that no one else will ever wear shoes. Not ever. Look at, I'm going to give example and name names. Look at Murkomen. Murkomen don't even say that he has expensive tastes. He grew up in Elgeyo Marakwet, in a village. Went to school barefoot. But he's doing everything that he can to ensure one other child wears shoes. The problem we have as a country is believing propaganda. They tell you I'm funded. They don't freeze my bank accounts. They say I have money. They never show the money is. They make you hate me for telling you the truth. And that has been historically the truth. Muhammad was hated, Buddha was hated, Jesus was hated, because the people who have power have money. They make you hate the people who make you open your eyes. You look at the mid-centuries in old Europe. The people who survived the plague, what was the bubonic plague, was women who had cats, because cats used to eat rats. But they were banned on stake because they were told they were witches. The truth is, you don't have to vote for me. What I want all of you to do, get a voter's card. That's number one. Then decide whoever you vote for loves this flag. Not money, not land, not wealth. Because you have people who are in power, who are just empty inside. And their way of just running this country is gaining and gaining power. What's my past? I've been in the streets for the last 20 years, almost 20 years. I've mentored artists. I've fought for grabbed land. The current president was grabbing a playground to build a parking for his hotel, which is built on stolen land. That man was accused of rape and murder at the ICC. So, in comparison with the people in power, I'm a fucking saint. It's true. And I give you this promise because I'm here. Because you all know my kids. Nate, Nyla, Jabu. Those are my 3 kids. I don't have any other kids. And I say this. I want to run this country in a proper way. And if I betray this country, you can come and burn me and my family at stake. Because I'm not going to get into power to steal. I don't need nothing. Just need to fix this country. 29 million Kenyans, I can see your hand. Sorry, I'm taking over. 29 million Kenyans don't have access to clean water. This is one of the few countries in the world where people shit in paper bags. One of the few countries in the world. I want to tell you this country can be fixed. We are rich, we're just being grabbed, they're stealing our money and stealing in the name of the Lord. I want you guys to revolt. Last year you revolted. Keep on loving this country and revolting, and I can guarantee you, in 2 years, if you remove this man in power and you elect men and women who love this country, it's going to get fixed. I guarantee you that. And I don't claim that I'm the saint, but don't vote for a man who kills our brothers and sisters. Don't vote for a man who says, I killed, here's some money for you. Don't do that. Ruto must go! Can I see your flags? Ruto must go! Ruto must go! You cannot kill us and lead us. You must go.
One more time, round of applause to Boni. Hey, amekuja na moto. We had a question at the back.
Hi. So my question is, as you are vying for presidency in 2027, all our institutions are full of cartels, are full of systems, are full of Bimindio, Mwenye, this area. What makes you the best person to handle those systems and dismantle those systems and let those systems work for the ordinary Kenyans and not just everyone that has been there since Moi's time, Kibaki's, Uhuru, Ruto, etc. So what makes you the best system to dismantle this system and make those systems work for us as ordinary Kenyans?
I've been told to keep my answers very short. And it's a very simple answer. I am not a thief, but for me to get into power, you have to elect me and elect MCAs who are clean, MPs who are clean, senators who are clean, women reps who are clean. But as long as you sell your vote for a shuka or unga, we can't fix this country. As long as you elect someone who has money because they promise you heaven, Kenya will never change. But the truth is, the fish rots from the head. So if you fix the head, the body is going to be fine. When Ruto says Singapore, South Korea, it's because they had good leadership at the very top. Fix the top, the bottom is going to be fine. But as long as you have a bad head, the bottom is rotten. So the fish rots from the head. So if you elect me, I'm promising you, with the life of my mother, who is dead, like I'm saying in the life of my mother, but with my kids, I'm going to fix this country.
Great. We'll take another set of questions. There's a question over here. Yeah, and guys, we have 4 panelists, okay? This is not a one-on-one. So we take this question, and there's that gentleman over there at the back, yeah?
Yes, I remember there's I have a question that leads to a question. When you bid for presidency, I told my friends, I posted in the group and then there was like, guys, Boniface has bid for presidency. And then they didn't know much about you. Actually, they were telling me about the propaganda that is out there in the social medias. They're telling me how you are being paid. Actually, what I want from you, and it looked like see if I was clearing your name, and I didn't have the evidence. I was like, no, you guys go listen to what this dude is saying. This is what happened. This and this and this.
But while you're defending your name right there on that podium, you're not affirmative, and that is what scares me. You're telling me, I don't want you to vote me in, but I want you to know that when I get in, I want this and that. I remember a few years ago, you what is that thing called? You were vying for some was it gubernatorial, some starehe position, yeah. And then you were getting in the streets telling those mama mbogas that you didn't have money, and they didn't vote you in. They gave it to, is it Jaguar? Yeah. So I want you to be quite affirmative. Please tell us that you are not funded, because that is the propaganda out here. I want you to be affirmative, and I want you to stand with that thing with your chest and tell us that this is what you're doing, because so far, so good. What do we have?
All right, I'll take another, that gentleman at the back. Then you can answer both questions at the same time. And again, I'm going to remind you guys, we have a panel of 4 people. This is not a I'm coming to her. I have seen her, okay?
Hi. My question is addressed to Mr. Ngartia. My question is, why does our history as Kenyans only start from 1800s or 1900s? When exactly does Kenyan history start? Or where I'm coming from is countries like Japan can have history starting from 800 BC. Like, why does our history only start from the 1800s, you know? And then Mr. Keith Angana, you've said that those who study history are doomed to observe history as it repeats itself. Why do you think that, basically?
All right, so we start with Bonnie, and then we come to you, Ngartia, and then Keith. Please keep your answers short.
So I am not funded. I think I don't think there's enough money can be given to be arrested, tortured, beaten, your house bombed, and just living under fear. I used to jog in the morning. I can't jog anymore because I don't want to get hit by a car or shot by the road. It takes a lot of risk to do what I do. But it comes from a place that I really, really love this country. I don't want to be anywhere else in the world. And I believe this country is fixable. I've tried a couple of times to quit activism. I was selling land. I was doing debt collection. I do all manner of things to pay my bills. And still I come back to loving this country and think that we can fix this country. That's why I began a political party. That's why I'm vying. And I'm hoping that the basic minimum of this struggle is that I can inspire many young people to believe Kenya can be better. We don't have any other country. And my fear is that if we do not liberate this country in the next 2 years, this man will never leave power. He's very hungry, and he treats this country as his personal property. And he works with warlords. He's working Sudan warlords, South Sudan warlords. He's working with guys in Congo. He's a dangerous man. And this man knows 2 languages and 2 things. He still speaks the language of violence and bribery. If you don't take the money, he kills you. And so as long as I can breathe and I can fight back and I can say something, I'm going to fight this government until it falls. But I hope that if I come to an untimely death, that people who remain behind continue the struggle. Our forefathers fought for land and freedom. But they got Uchungu na Uhuru. We never got back the land. And land means that you have a pay slip. Land means that you have a house, you have a medical cover, you have hospitals, you have education. We don't have those things. Every single Kenyan here, 99% of us are hustlers. We're struggling, paycheck to paycheck. And it's not right that people died in vain. So as you hold that flag that they used to make, this used to be actually illegal to hold this flag, apart from national days. Last year, the young people of this country, the Gen Z, liberated it. And we have smelled the taste of freedom. But if we allow ourselves to be bamboozled with this compensation for dead people, and then second term, we are done as a country. And if we allow ourselves to vote for Kanu orphans, we're done as a country. So we have to rethink and reimagine a new Kenya and dare to say, nakufa na hii side. And that side is our side. So let's commit to ensure that this man doesn't come back. Because if he comes back, Kenya, as you know, it is done. It's been Kenya Kusha since he came into power. And it's become a Kamaliza, he's just killing young people. And so, whatever you do, whether you like me or not, I don't give a fuck. The thing is, whatever you do, ensure that whatever you do, Ruto does not come back to power. Because if he does, he will ruin this country. He's a guy who's going to burn the entire country so you can feel the warmth of the ashes.
Whoa. Ngartia?
Check. To add to those few comments, why does Kenyan history feel like it begins in the 1800s? Because we are such successful colonial projects. We are. And it has been drilled into us, as I said earlier, through generations. The definition we were given as a people, and still are, came from a very racist place. Eugenics and all that. And one of the arguments for that is that Africans are subhuman, which means we do not have history as well, right? So in that racist framework, your history begins when you enter civilization. Or as Miriam Makeba would put it, no one exists until a white person sees them. And then suddenly, now you exist, now you're part of the world. That's where we're coming from. It's before Berlin Conference, we are not considered part of popular history. I don't even think we're considered part of prehistory, which is why our archaeology messes them up so much. But now, second part of the answer, you have to separate two things. You have to separate the Kenyan state, which is a colonial creation, and the land and the people within those borders. We are not colonial creations. We're not colonial discoveries. We've been here and we've been around for a while, which means we do have our history going all the way back. It may not be written, right, which is another fight because oral literature was made to look smaller than written word, but we still have it. A lot of people have done a lot of work over the years to preserve it, to move it forward, and to make sure our history is still growing and being understood. So it's now our part to take it up. Doing the work is important, but I think, to me, what is more important is to own it and to love it. And be like, I don't care if my ancestors were walking around killing each other without understanding a single word of Western philosophy. Fuck Western philosophy. I'd like to know what our philosophy was then. All right? So we do have that history. The question is, where do you find it? So you have to start with yourself. And only speak for myself, and then we all do the work. For me, I discovered it's in my name. So the Kikuyu and the Meru embed a lot of stories and the things that happen in the name that you're given, the name of your age group, the name of your ruling age group. There's a lot of them. And the moment I started digging into the names, then I started getting access to Kikuyu and Kimeru history that goes all the way to the 1100s. So they can keep their Roman Empire. Me, I'd rather know the stuff here. And we have it, bro. We have it.
Right, Kate.
So your question was on why I believe the phrase, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. So I'll just give a very simple explanation for that. Does anybody know about the structural adjustment programs, SAPs? So the SAPs were introduced first in Kenya in the 1990s after the Moi era when, of course, the government had plundered the money that was around the country, and so they had to borrow loans from the IMF and from the World Bank in order to fund or to rescue the economy. And you know, the loans from the IMF and the World Bank usually come with conditions. For example, they say that you have to stop funding education, you have to stop funding health in order to repay these loans. So a similar thing is happening at the moment because, of course, with the many loans and with the plunder that the Uhuru regime had done, we had took out so many loans. And now the time to pay them back has come. But then now the conditions that you're facing is that you have to stop funding education and you have to stop funding healthcare and all this stuff that similarly happened in the 1990s. But the fact that we weren't keen, or the people in power, of course they didn't care, but the fact that this wasn't a consideration at the time, that they hadn't read about what happened in the past, exactly, and that is what is happening at the moment, clearly shows that we do not care about history. And it's interesting that the current president back in 2015, he made a statement asking, mbona watoto wasome Vasco da Gama, hiyo historia inawasaidiaje? So clearly, even him, he does not care about what happened in the past. So it's not impossible for us to make errors, or it's not impossible for us to do the wrongs that we did in the past, because we do not care about that. Like, we have no considerations for that. We just work, okay, or the government is just working with how it thinks, even if there are some errors in it. So that's why I believe in the phrase, if you do not learn from what happened in the past, you're very much doomed to repeat those mistakes.
Very well said. Round of applause to Keith. So, due to the interest of time, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take one burning question from you, all right? And then after that, I'm going to invite any panelists, in case you have a question towards each other, you'll be able to do that. But guys, this does not mean this is the end of it. The panelists are still around. Please do not walk away without having your question answered. So please walk up to them and ask them the question. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, Ngartia. Hi, Nzoki. How are you? So, Ngartia, I've known you as a poet, and poetry for me is something that is very pure. And let me generalize it as art, because I would love for Nzoki to join in and maybe answer this as well. Art plays an important role in preserving our history and communicating it as well. How do we make it stick? How do we change it from? I listened to Ngartia perform. At that time, I shed tears because he was talking about murders and abduction cases. But then I leave that place and I go somewhere else, and I've given a leso, I'm given some 200 shillings, and somehow it washes Ngartia's words away. I repeat the same mistakes that I've been. How do we use art to make all this stick?
Powerful question right there. So,
Joki, you've been mentioned, so this is our question in the AKT. I don't believe that we have to make it work. I believe it already is. Just from the mere motivation that makes an art piece exist, right? Or especially if you're speaking about things of national consequence, for example, or personal consequence, it's resonant across the country. That is already an action. That's a refusal to keep silent. It's already an action. Speaking out is an action. Then speaking out and putting it in art is a second action, which is not only will I not shut up, not only will I speak, I'm also gonna make it really pretty, right? Because part of the violence is made to also affect us aesthetically. The things that make you happy are robbed from you, pole pole. So we lose our wistfulness. You log on to X and now there's not a goddamn joke. Unaamka kila mtu ni activist. So it's the humor, it's the beauty, it's community and the small things we gather around, from smoky pasua to blankets. That's what eventually makes a nation. And art is sort of like a thread that stitches a lot of things together, right? So you end up in a situation like this where you can bring a group of people together to talk about a thing, but we are all doing very different things. I do storytelling and poetry. Joki is in poetry and music. Keith writes everything, I think. And Keith follows all the side quests. And Boni, I knew him as an artist, as a photographer, right? And Boni's expression of his art led him down his path, which led to the creation of power, which created a space for me 13 years ago to then start doing my kind of poetry, which didn't have space elsewhere. So practicing art is an action that leads to another action that opens up more. I hope I've answered that. That's the best of my ability.
I think what I'll say is you have to have the interest first, right? If you don't want to learn about something, no matter how beautifully I speak it to you or how beautifully I sing it to you, it won't make a difference to you. I'll say for me, the reason why now I know what I know about politics is because I got to a place where I was like, I need to be educated because clearly I don't know what's happening. And not knowing is causing me a lot more pain than it is helping me, right? So I think when we get to like I love what Ngartia has shared about learning the history of the Kikuyu and the Meru. Because then it's like, oh, where does my name come from? That's very interesting. So then it helps you work your way backwards. But if you're not interested, it won't make a difference. So I think it's important for us to want to know. Then if you want to know, you will make the change, right? I don't know if it won't stick if you don't want it to stick.
And I love that.
So sorry. Let me
Sure, go ahead.
because I'll never get another place that's this perfect for it. In 2017, when we were starting Too Early for Birds, we were trying to pitch it, and people were like, history in front of people, Kenyans, good luck, right? Now I'm here in a bar, you guys are talking history, I didn't even have to hide it at a theater. It's the first action leads us here.
Very well said. Very well said. And I love that we're all talking about clarity and the need to look for a hunger to want to know, you know? Because I think as a result of last year, we've had to go back and understand what is the Constitution. What does Article 13 say? What does this say? What is my right? What is a finance bill? What does it say? And I love that anyone who has made time to be here for Drunken lectures is curious enough to want to have their thirst of knowledge quenched. So to the panelists, do you have questions to each other? If not, give your final remarks. You can start with you, Bonnie.
So, the people who fought for this country between 1908 to 63 were people who loved this country deeply. They self-organized. There were men in the forest. There were people who stole bullets, took them to the people in the forest. Women who smuggled food. There was commitment. And they were able to liberate Kenya from the colonialists' hands through sheer love and courage. And this country has never been led by people who have fought for it. Kenyatta I was a collaborator, Moi was a collaborator, Kibaki was a Moi project, Uhuru was the son of the first president, then you have Ruto who was part of KANU. So Kenya has never been led by people who love Kenya. It has been led by people who are mercenaries, collaborators, thieves, murderers, and rapists. 2027, yes, you have a chance to elect people who love this country. And those people who love this country in your own community, who can become your MCA, your MP, your women rep, your senator, your president, and even your governor. Please elect people who love this country. Don't elect people who are self-centered and who are just political conmen and women. Don't fall for that. Run away from tribalism. Tribalism is poisonous. Run away from money politics. It won't help you. Look for those people who care for this country and elect them. Please remember this. The destiny of our nation is in your vote and the votes of your friends and your family. So if you don't have a voter's card, go register to vote. if you don't have an ID, get an ID. The future of our country is at stake. Right now, you have a gangster nation. We have poisonous fertilizer, SHA is not working, we even paid for exams. Let me give you an example of what education can do for you. I'm a classic dropout. I never went to high school. But I went to a school where there were books and I read and I read. I'm self-educated. But right now, kids who are leaving school at Form 4, or even uni, can't read or write. The quality of education is very low. Because the people who are in power don't invest in education, because educated people will actually protest. When you have an education populace, they resist and they protest. So, for the love of this nation, elect better. For your self-love, elect better. If you're a woman in this country, and you know that femicide is a thing, and the man in power doesn't care about femicide, because he's a practitioner of femicide, vote for men and women who love this country. That's the bottom line. So go get that voters card. We have about 10 to 15 million Kenyans who don't have voters cards. Let them get those voters cards. We have 8 million Kenyans who did not vote in the last election. Let them vote this coming election. The future of our country in the next 2 years is in your vote. Don't forget that.
Keith?
For some reason, when we always talk about change in this country, we always focus on mostly the presidency, but it's important to remember that in terms of the three arms of government, the legislature is the one which makes laws that govern this nation. So when we want change, it's important to also focus on parliament, because the MPs are the ones who are in charge of the constituencies and making laws that govern us. So even when going to 2027, it's important to make right decisions when voting in for the MCAs, for the MPs, for the women reps, for the senators, for the governors, each and every other person. And if there isn't a person whom we deem competent in that lineup, I mean, this isn't restricted to a few people, so you can be the change that you want to see. If you don't deem any person on that list as competent, like we can't keep, because we have been complaining about this, actually that's one of the main reasons why people didn't vote in 2022, but we can't keep on complaining in every election cycle and then electing in the bad leaders and then complaining and then waiting for the next election. So in 2027, be the change that you want to see.
Round of applause to Keith. Ngartia.
The brief was a question, so I'm going to keep it a question to both my fellow panelists and all of you. You don't need to answer it now, but think about it. Dedan Kimathi didn't live to see this country. Muthoni Nyanjiro did not live to see this country. A lot of our heroes are dead. They never lived to see the country that they fight for, they fought for. Me, I don't plan to be one of those guys, and I hope you're not planning to be one of those guys. We have to see this country that we are fighting so hard for. We have to live in it. Right? So, for us to get there, though, we need to be there intact. We need to be there, and we need to be there intact. So how are you protecting yourself from being destroyed by this country in the moment? Your little community of friends, the people you love, that, as I said, the things that make you happy, whatever. Do you have a garden? Do you have a plant on the balcony, a pet? What are those really, really, really delicate parts of you that you show the people you love, and that's where you've built that bond that identifies you as Kenyan? Please protect that, because we're gonna need to have you as that really funny, really soft, really sensitive person once we're done with the fight. So how are you protecting that?
Well said, Ngartia, well said. Njoki?
Honestly, my final remarks, Ngartia, you're such a great person. Thank you for saying that. I think that's really important for us to hear even as we do whatever it is that we're doing. So thank you so much for existing.
Guys, help me appreciate our panelists this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You may exit the stage. We can do better. Let's appreciate them for taking their... We have a small token of appreciation. We'd like to say Asante, Asante sana to you. Aya, angalieni kameramani.